Hey guys, it's Woody. So let me do some adjustments here. Sorry about that. Should have had that done before starting. But anyway, so I'm coming at you again with another possibly long video, I think. And this is something that, I've been taking notes on it for a couple of days, and I've just kind of been observing some stuff. And what sparked this for me is a few days ago I was driving, I believe it was Nebraska, but anyway, I was driving and I had it all planned out, had my day planned out, where I was going to stop that day. And I started getting close, and I was tired, and I'm looking at my GPS, and it's telling me how much farther I have, and I'm looking at my clock, and I'm like, wow, I can drive another hour, so I continued driving. And I went to another truck stop that I frequent, but it was a little bit farther. And when I pulled onto the off ramp to get to this truck stop, my CB has a built-in weather scanner, weather radio. And I have it set so that if an alert comes up, it goes off, and it'll switch over to it automatically and play it. So as I'm getting off the off ramp, my weather alert goes off, and I was talking to my stepdad with my earpiece here, and I didn't catch the first part of it, but the part that I did catch was that severe thunderstorms, hail possible, vehicle damage, rooftops being blown off, and things like that. And it was where I was going to stay that night. And then as I was like, okay, cool. So I hit the button, switched back over to the CB. And then as I'm pulling into the parking lot, it came on again. And this time I heard the full message. It was severe thunderstorms, 60-mile-an-hour winds, hail, all that stuff. And the forces of the winds could cause possible tornadoes. And I'm looking at the sky, okay? As I was driving earlier, I'm like, man, I haven't seen a tornado sky in a long time, but this looks pretty eerie, and then I heard that, and I was like, wow, I would be in it right now. And that's what I was thinking at the time. I would have been there. And of course, I was still getting a pretty good amount of rain and wind and stuff like that, but I'm also 60 miles away from where I was. So I'm like, wow, and I was like, well, thank you, God, for, giving me the idea that maybe I should just keep driving. So that brought me to, asking for signs, people asking for signs, asking God for signs. And of course, I always immediately go to the story of Gideon in the book of Judges. Excuse me 1 second. I apologize. My nose is going crazy. Oh, but so, like I was saying, book of Judges, story of Gideon, in Judges chapter 6, verse 15. It says, "So he said to him, 'O my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least of my father's house.' And the Lord said to him, 'Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man.'" So God is telling Gideon, don't worry, I have your back, and you're going to defeat the Midianites. Their whole army, you're going to defeat them so easily, it's going to be as if they are one person. And it goes on that, Gideon and his army, they go through a series of battles, and, they win. And now he's coming to the point where, he's got to go ahead and do this thing that God told him that he would be able to do. And in verse 36 of chapter 6 says, "So Gideon said to God, 'If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, look, I shall put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said.'" It's twice now he said, "as you have said." And it was so. When he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece together, he wrung the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. Okay, that for some people that would be like, okay, that's a pretty good sign, I get it. But he goes on. "Then Gideon said to God, 'Do not be angry with me, but let me speak just once more. Let me test, I pray, just once more with the fleece. Let it now be dry only on the fleece, but on all the ground let there be dew.' And God did so that night. It was dry on the fleece only, but there was dew on all the ground." So here you have, God has already told Gideon that I'll be with you. This is going to be easy for you to do. Don't worry about it. I got you. And Gideon, like most of us, if not all of us, are like, that kind of seems like a big job for little old me. I'm not sure if I'm the right person for this job. Can you give me a sign? And God probably could have been like, I already told you. That should be enough. I have already told you. There's your sign. But God was like, okay, I'll throw you a bone. And he did so. He gave him 2 different signs, 2 different days, and for me, what I have learned and what I have experienced is, we get signs every single day. Every day of our life, we get signs. And they're not always what we expect them to be. They're not always, big bold letters or a flashing sign. But every day, if we're listening to the Spirit, we get signs. And for me, it was that idea of I can drive a little bit farther, and my wife just recently, I gave her this necklace. I actually got it for me, but I didn't like it because it was too big and heavy. But it's obsidian. It's an obsidian necklace. It's got a carving of a wolf and the Chinese character for protection. And since I stopped wearing it, she put it on the mirror of her car. And she was telling me the other day, I think that necklace is actually gives me some protection. And she told me that, the other night she was really tired because we've been moving, or she's been moving. She's been packing and, working on top of that. So she was really tired coming home from work one night. And as she's driving, that necklace was just going all over the place, and she's like, what is going on? And so she reached over and she grabbed it to make it stop swinging. And right as that happened, some car came around her and swerved into her lane and almost hit her. And I'm like, well, maybe that was God just trying to get your attention, pay attention to what's going on around you. So he was probably using that necklace because it's right there, and it's making all kinds of movements, and okay, you got my attention. So things like that, and if we're paying attention enough, if we're, reading the Word, praying, that Spirit becomes stronger, that Holy Spirit becomes stronger with us, and so in the New Testament, they're in John, the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 15 through 18. It says, "If you love me, keep my commandments, and I will pray the Father, and he will give you another helper, that he may abide with you forever. The Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. But you know him, for he dwells within you and will be in you. I will not leave you orphans, I will come for you." And that is Jesus speaking. So it tells us right here that the Spirit is a helper. It helps us through situations and just our everyday lives. And it says, "I will not leave you orphans, I will come for you." And that's pretty powerful right there. And and then there's some things with this move. When we first started getting this ball rolling and we found the house, and everything started falling into place, which that's another way the Spirit works. These signs, everything literally just fell into place, and it was just like, here it is, like this is it. Well, one night I'm laying in bed, and my head is just going, and I'm like freaking out. Okay, what if this isn't the right house? What if this isn't the house for us? What if something falls through? What if? And I started getting this anxiety, because I get anxiety attacks from time to time. And I started feeling this thing just starting to build up, and I caught myself, and I was like, that feeling right there is not of God. That's a feeling of fear. Fear is not of God. So those are lies. And the devil is a liar. Fear is a liar. And that brings me to this one. This is 1 John, chapter 5, verse 6. 1 John is in the back of the New Testament, not the Gospel of John in the front. So it says, "This is he who came by water and blood, Jesus Christ, not only by water, but by water and blood. And it is the Spirit who bears witness, because the Spirit is truth." And that's another one of the things that we have to be open to, because the Spirit is truth. And there are many spirits, right? There's the spirit of truth, there's the spirit of lying, there's the spirit of fear, but the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God, is the Spirit of truth. That will never change. And again in 1 John chapter 4 verses 1 through 3, it says, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard was coming and is now already in the world." And, it says there, test the spirit. So, how do we do that? How do we test the spirit? Well, like I said, when I got that feeling of anxiety, I knew that was not God, because I've never felt that with God and with the things that God has asked me to do. Now, I'm not saying I haven't been afraid. It's a human emotion. There's a lot of things that are kind of scary, like, this whole house thing. Getting this house, it was my first time ever applying for a loan, for a home loan. It was kind of like big boy stuff. I had to put my big boy pants on, and there was a lot of stuff to soak up, and it was all happening so fast, and I was stressing out, and I was like, this is so much trouble. Maybe we should just rent, and the loan officer called me back and said, I can't approve you for a home loan right now, but if you rent for 6 months to a year and work on your credit, I'm real close. Then maybe within 6 months you can be ready to buy. And honestly, that was kind of a relief to me, because the whole home loan thing, it's a big deal. There's a lot of stuff to soak up, and it was real nerve-wracking. It was stressful. So I was like, okay, all right, so we can rent. I was like, but I want to rent a house, and I've been wanting a house, and I think I've told you guys this before, but we had a list of things that we wanted, and my mom told me, hey, there's this house for rent. Now, where we're looking to move, there's nothing for rent. When we were looking, there was nothing for rent. There was a lot of stuff for sale. That's one reason why we were like, okay, well, let's try to buy. But nothing was for rent. Well, my mom said there's a house for rent. It's got a fenced yard, and she already set up an appointment to go look at it. My wife was going to be in town, but that wasn't the plan. That I wasn't planning on being in town that day, until I'm like, well, I have this load. It delivers in Phoenix and doesn't deliver for another day. I was just going to do a 34-hour reset. I was 3 hours away. I was going to do a 34-hour reset and just keep rolling. That was my plan. I was just going to keep rolling. And I was like, wait, I want to see this house. Because, I don't want my wife to have to make a decision like that on her own, So I'm like, okay. So I asked, my dispatcher if I could have some home time, and he was like, yeah, we'll just drop the load off. One of our guys will do it. One of the local guys will do it. I was like, okay, cool. So we went. I mean, that's one of the things. Everything falling into place. My wife is going to be in town. Well, now I can be in town. and take a few days off and be able to just relax a little bit, see my wife. I mean, that in itself, like I said, trying to get the money going, and I was just going to stay out on the road and keep rolling, but God had a different plan. And maybe not realizing it, I listened, because sometimes you don't think about it being God's voice or the Holy Spirit. You don't think about it being that. You just think of it as, oh, that's a good idea, or maybe it's intuition or whatever, but that's how it works. And on the same time, on the other side of that, that's also how the devil works, because the devil just whispers in your ear, gives you this idea, and you go and do it. But the differences are, the devil's never going to make you do anything, or the devil will rarely tell you to do anything good, if ever. God will never tell you to do something bad. He will never tell you to do something that goes against His word. And God has no ulterior motive, which brings me back to the devil will sometimes tell you to do things that are good or that may seem good, but they'll take you to places that are not. So that's where you have to be careful. You have to be in tune with the Spirit. And and as far as my experiences, like, there are no coincidences. I don't believe in coincidence at all, because that trip when we found that house, and for all of those things to just come together, that are way too many coincidences for that to be a coincidence, if you get what I'm saying. Another example, my ex-wife, a long time ago, we had a bank, and we always went to the same bank. 9 times out of 10, we went to a specific building, a specific bank. And one day my ex-wife was driving to the bank, and she's at this road, and our bank was to the right, and there was another bank, also our bank, but another bank that was, if she went left, she would go to that one. It's a little bit farther, but she was like, maybe I'll just go to that bank today. Well, she got to that bank, and it turns out that at the same time, our bank was being robbed at gunpoint. So, there's that. There's too many things at play for coincidence to exist. So that's pretty much what I've got. I'm sure I had some other stuff to say, because like I said, I've been kind of letting this simmer for a while, and just over the past few days, the things that have happened, and this topic keeps coming up in my everyday conversations, just signs, so, and in fact, kind of funny, speaking of signs, there's that old thing that you always see written on the side of a wall, for a good time, call. Well, I was driving down the road, and there was a billboard that said, for a good sign, call, with a phone number. I thought that was kind of funny, for a good sign. But anyway, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're looking for a sign, look no further. because they're everywhere. You just have to pay attention. You don't need to ask God for a sign. He's showing you all the time. He's showing you all the time. Maybe this video is a sign. You know, I don't know. But there are always signs everywhere. You just have to, you know, pay attention. So yeah, like tomorrow, again, the plan was my wife was going to drive out there, pay the rest of the money so that we could sign the lease and get our keys and all of that good stuff. And I wasn't going to be anywhere near it. Well, tomorrow I have a delivery. And after the delivery, I get some home time. Guess where I'm going to be? So, I mean, it just, you can't deny it. I can't deny it. Maybe you can, and I don't know. If you want to keep denying it, there's stuff in here about that too. I might get to that later. But, you know, but seriously though, I mean, since I started this year anyway, reading through the Bible, like I said, I've read through this thing. I've read it cover to cover a couple times, like 2 times. But this time I've got like a reading plan, and the way that they have it set up, it's like you read a book of the Old Testament and a book of the New Testament and a book of the Old Testament and a book of the New Testament. So you kind of get a balance, you know, between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and you can see how things contrast to each other, because, you know, the Old Testament, you get the old laws, the old ways, the old culture. The New Testament, you get, you know, Jesus, the way that Jesus did things, and the new law, and, you know, the way that Christians today should live, rather than, you know, the Israelites of, you know, the Old Testament. And, you know, it's just, there's a lot of good stuff in this book. That's why it's called the Good Book. But, you know, and there's a lot of times where I'm reading it and I don't even think that I'm retaining anything at all. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And then, you know, like the other day I got to go to a church service at a truck stop, and this pastor's up there and he's preaching, and he's talking about, you know, the fleece. He was talking about the fleece. I'm like, oh, I know where that is in the Bible, you know. And he was talking about, I don't know, but he was talking about stories in the Bible, and I could identify where they were in the Bible. I might not be able to tell you like the exact chapter and verse, but I know what book it's in. That's a starting point, you know. So I am retaining stuff, even if I don't think I am. So, you know, just pick one up and read it, because that's all I was doing when I first started, you know, getting back into, you know, the Word. I would literally just like open it up and read whatever was on that page, because I didn't have a plan. I just read whatever's on that page, and a lot of times it was Psalms or Proverbs, you know. Bible kind of naturally opens up to that. But, and if I had my old Bible, which I left at home, but the first one that I got at a truck stop, that's what I would do. And I've got pages just marked and marked and marked, you know, with, like this one I have it marked. This isn't the actual reference, that was something different. But that highlight right there, that's one that I'm trying to memorize, and you'd think it'd be easy to memorize because it's only 2 lines. But you know, I think I'd rather know the meaning of something than have it memorized and it loses its meaning and it means nothing. So I have it marked so that I can open up to it and just look at it. And what it is Psalm 51:10. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. And that's just, it's kind of a prayer that I pray every day, whether I say those words or not. That's what I pray for. So anyway, I've rambled on long enough, and if you're still watching, I really do appreciate it, and I hope you got something out of it. I hope it wasn't just, talking in circles like I tend to do. But anyway, that is all I have for you today. Reach for the sky, thank a trucker, and God bless.